Hello. We are still talking about emotions today. And for Facing Freedom for Women, the lesson is number 6. And for Grace Through Christ, it's number 12. And we are going to be talking about Jesus feeds the 5,000 and talking about anxiety. That's the emotion for today. So thanks for tuning in. We are going to do the same thing we usually do, where we think for a minute about emotions. And first of all, what does that feel like? I'm going to explore that emotion for a minute. When I'm feeling anxious, what does that mean? What is it happening in my body? What's happening in my thoughts? And what am I doing when I'm anxious? How do I cope with that? What is my next response to that? What am I doing before maybe I get anxious? A lot of things to think about there for a minute. Overall, it's different than fear because we will be talking about a lesson about fear. But right now we're talking about, some would say maybe worry. So when you think about what is anxiety, some people might say that I'm on a medication for that, for anxiety. So I don't feel that way. It's usually pretty not comforting, not peaceful feeling. Just like maybe you might think about anger being, or depression being, is it's not a place you want to sit for very long. Usually that heart starts beating fast, and we hit into that fight or flight thought of I gotta do something. I don't like feeling this way. Perhaps it's because we think that we don't have any control over something, and maybe what's expected of us is more than what we're able to do with our resources. And so we start to think, I'm kind of thoughts maybe like I'm doomed. I'm in trouble here. And I don't know any way out, or I've got to find a way out. And that's where sometimes the fight comes in, where you start to believe, I got to do something. And so all these emotions can kind of get related. In a way, when you start to have anxiety, again, and maybe you start to feel angry, maybe you start to blame people because you can't meet that need. Maybe you start to just get sad and overwhelmed, and because you're anxious, you don't know what else to do, so you withdraw, and maybe you feel like you want to give up. The other thought is that you freeze, and that may be part of that. Just getting paralyzed, just getting numb, and maybe numbing out. And so when you think about what you do when you're anxious, it might be that you do have a way to have medication. You also might take something yourself that is a self-medication, a way, one way or another, for you to not think about it, to run away from that situation, to try to think that it is better than what it is, to kind of fool yourself in a way. So there's a lot of little tricks that our mind can do, really, for all of these emotions. Our minds have a big part to play in it. And we talked for a second then about the kind of thoughts we have when we're anxious, and what we can do negatively. Then we want to think about, we've kind of seen it maybe in some of the other emotions. Can anxiety be a gift from God? I sure don't feel like it at the time. Just like grief or anger or depression, or even feeling, we're going to talk about guilt, shame. I don't know so much as a gift, because we're taking the gift of guilt and turning it wrong. But all these things can be helpful. Like, God will not waste it. And so I also think about all these emotions. I'm surprised I haven't mentioned, I don't think, this before, but for me, the emotions are like a smoke alarm. So we purposely are told to put them in our houses. They're a nuisance. So when I am cooking, and when Sarah cooks and the smoke alarm goes off, which it often does, it's a nuisance. And so after a while, sometimes we just take the battery out, and we just say, yeah, that's annoying that is going off. And why is it annoying? Well, we figure there's no reason for it really yet. I'm aware that my food is burning, or that the oven needs to be cleaned. I already know this, so there's no sense of hearing this alarm. But God has kind of given us these emotions as alarms, of sorts of ways to get our attention, of ways to teach us something about how we are with what's happening and in our lives. And so they're really there to pay attention to, and not just to take the battery out. And so with anxiety, it is, I believe, kind of God letting us know something ain't right. And maybe even with anger or with grief or with depression or with anything, just to take, instead of running away from any of those emotions, is sitting in them. And what to do next is really where we're going at. We're human. We're going to have thoughts, and those thoughts might help have us feeling like, have a thought in our head, like the challenge in front of me is too big than the resources I have. Then what do we do? So I thought this was a good lesson to talk about that. Matthew 14, verses 13 to 21. And verse 13 starts off like this. When Jesus heard what had happened, he withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place. Hearing of this, the crowds followed him on foot from the towns. So remember what we say about when we hear words like now, here we have the word when Jesus heard what happened. How are we gonna find out what happened? So I only have part of this on our sheets, but we have to go back then to in context. We read the Bible for what sort of happens before. We can look at what happens after. So we want to know what happened. So if you look at Matthew chapter 14, the beginning of that chapter, we see what happened, and it was not good. It was very painful. It introduces us, reminds us who John the Baptist is, that and what had happened to him. John the Baptist was Jesus' cousin. He was the one that God had even prophesied would be coming to prepare the way for Jesus' birth. And he was courageous, and he told people to repent. And it was kind of that message of showing sin for what it was to someone who was in charge, and that they didn't appreciate his message. And Herodias was living an improper, sinful life with Herod's brother Philip, former wife of Herod's brother Philip. It gets, I guess, like a soap opera here, but ultimately she wanted him gone. She didn't like the message that he was telling her. And again, you hear the phrase blame the messenger. It was really God she wasn't happy with, because God was saying that her lifestyle choices weren't what he wanted. And so instead of listening to that, she wanted to have him killed. And so finally the time came around where her daughter was given a promise that because of a dance she had done, that she could have anything she asked for, and she asked for John the Baptist's head on a tray, on a platter. In other words, beheaded. And this king who had promised and made an oath, instead of taking it back because of pride, we talked about that in our last lesson, and feeling there was no other choice, had someone killed, had John the Baptist killed. And so just kind of a meaningless crime. And Jesus was told about this. Jesus heard the news about this. So it kind of wraps together a lot of our emotions, right? We can't even really, or maybe you can know times when you've been told news that you go through all those stages of thinking it can't be, or thinking you want to quick go and get revenge, or thinking just you, I don't know, sadness. And there's a whole list of different things you might feel when you hear news that you just think you can maybe somehow still change it or whatever. And again, we talked about everybody deals with grief differently. And so we have Jesus, who perfectly deals with everything and all his emotions. He did everything just the way his Father would have wanted. And so here he hears this news and he says, what does he do? He withdrew by boat privately. He needed to a solitary place. He wasn't running away from his emotion, because you take your emotion with you. But he knew in his heart he just needed to be alone with this. He wanted to be in prayer about this. He's never without his Father either, and neither are we. So we take us and we take our Father with her, even when, and our Jesus with us, even when we might need to get away. So he's going away to a quiet place, but we see that the crowds didn't know this. They didn't either. They didn't care. They didn't know. They just wanted to be near Jesus. They had their own emotions and diseases and sicknesses and desires to be forgiven and to be filled, and curiosity, and whatever reasons. I'm sorry to play with this phone. I just don't want it to be difficult for you. It's not sitting right. For whatever reasons, they all wanted to come and see Jesus, which was often that there was a crowd trying to be where Jesus was. And so verse 2 says, when Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, what do you think he did? What did he say? I just can't deal with this, people. I need to take care of myself, and it's not good timing. You just need to come back at another time. I'm spent emotionally. I can't do this. Spiritually, physically, I have to have my alone time. That'll probably be what we might say, and there's probably nothing necessarily wrong with that, to recognize that, but Jesus was ready. He could do this with his Father's help, even when he was at that brink of his limits. With God, all things are possible. And so he wanted to stay with them. It said he had compassion on them. A word here used in the Greek is called splanchnizomai, which means you feel it in your gut. That's the word used. For our sweet Jesus, who we see cried, we see got tired, got thirsty, here he also was feeling in his gut for people. And he wanted to help them. Each and every one of them mattered to him. And we can remember that right now too, that we do know that God is running this world, but we also know that right now, in whatever our struggle is, he's feeling for us. Even though he knows he can make it better, he's and it will get better. He's still at this moment having compassion on us. So he's doing the work, and God, his Father, is giving him the strength to do the work. And verse 15 says, as evening approached, the disciples came to him and said, this is a remote place, and it's already getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go to the villages and buy themselves some food. Remote, I would think means that it took a while for them to get there. They came from the towns, so they walked a little ways too, these people. It mattered to them to get there to see him. And it was a long day, and especially after what they had found out about John the Baptist, they were all dealing with a lot. And so maybe even with the disciples saying, Jesus, give the people, consideration, they might also just have been thinking too, we're really tired, and you've got to be really tired, and even if we can't say that for us, at least we want to take care of the people, make sure they get home, make it home, and the journey is long, and they're gonna be hungry. So how about we call it a day? And often when people give Jesus suggestions, he will say, let's not go with what people think. And it's like when his mother Mary said, Jesus, how about you give them some more wine? They ran out of wine. Jesus didn't immediately say, yep, I'll follow your suggestion. It wasn't what people wanted that made his will. It was what his Father wanted him to do. It wasn't even what he wanted. So I'm thinking when he went off to that remote place, it wasn't there to go and do ministry. It was there to relax and to feed himself and to pray and to cry and to just be in a safe place with his Father. But it wasn't just what he wanted, it was what his father wanted. So now he tells the disciples, and it seems pretty, I mean, they were probably nervous. They're like, whoa, now what? I mean, there's not like we can all just spend the night here. Are we gonna have the strength to get home? They're just thinking this is not a good situation for the people to be in, for us to be in. And I could start to feel anxious about that. And that would make sense. Sometimes when we look at what we have and maybe what yet we have to do, if you're in the middle of a journey and you're not sure how you're going to keep on making it, yeah, you're going to say, whoa, this is scary. I can't make sense of this. I don't know what the future holds. Um, it's normal to, as a human being, to think in your head, doesn't add up right now. So what do we do with that? Well, the disciples did the right thing. They went to Jesus. They said, we think our solution is to send the people home. And so they were trying to think of ways to solve that problem and to even bring that to Jesus too, instead of just making the decision themselves. But Jesus had a different solution. So that's the cool part. Like, in our anxiety, sometimes we might get desperate and we might think like we've got to do it this way, like just we've got to do it that way. There's no other way around it. We've got to make this decision. It's the one maybe that comes first to our heads, and it's the one that seems maybe easiest, or just that we know we have control over it if we do it this way, and we do it our own way and jump to it. It truly may not be even close to the right decision. We might really regret it later. And that's why God gives us this important, and I'm not even going to say option, but command, direction to pray about it first. When we're feeling that question mark of, what do I do next? How is this going to work out? How am I going to handle this? And we start almost going into that snowball effect that we can't even think right, or we're, talking to other people constantly about it. We're just getting more and more deeper into our own emotions, our own thoughts, then it turns into fears. You need to stop right away. And the Bible says, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present that request to God. And so that's what he would want the disciples to do. And he had a whole different solution. So Jesus replied, verse 16, they don't need to go away. You give them something to eat. That would not have been one of the ways to solve this problem that the disciples would have come up with. Often, God's solutions might be stuff that we wouldn't think seems the obvious solution. No, I gotta run away. God, this is not where I'm supposed to be. And God might say, no, you're gonna stay there, and I'm gonna make a way for you there. And we find in the Bible all times where, a lot of times where God will show he can make a way out of no way, and take a moment and ask God to show us his way. And it might take a moment, and you may have to live in that place of uncertainty and trust for a little while, so that you can see something even better when you allow God's timing and you allow him to hold you in those moments of anxiety or uncertainty. And it's a wonderful, beautiful thing that could bring you closer to God, is to say, even in this moment, even if I don't have control right now, even if I'm choosing not to just take the way that I think I can make things better, but choosing to let you direct me, the Bible says that those who wait upon the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. That when you are letting God be in charge of things, there's a different kind of peace. Not a peace like, I got this, but like the pride we talked about last week, but the peace of, God's got this. And that's so much even better than I've got this. So he says, give them something to eat. Well, now they're like, Okay, so in one of the other accounts of the feeding of the 5,000, he says, go see what you got. You think you don't have maybe anything, and that's one of the lies that we start to believe in anxiety is, I can't do this, I don't have anything. We get kind of all or nothing thinking. And so, well, what do you have? And they did an inventory. And maybe sometimes that inventory shows us just how little we have, as opposed to what we think we need. Might even show us that what we really do have. And at that moment, to thank God for what we really do have, even if it's little. And so, verse 17, we have only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. So they did an inventory. That's what they came up with. And so, what does Jesus say? Well, that isn't going to be enough. I guess, yeah, you're right. Maybe we're doomed and let's call it a day. So he's like, cool, okay, bring them here. So when you look at what you have, Jesus says, bring it here to me. Whatever, however poor, you might even think, all I got is me right now. You might be in a situation where you lost everything. All you maybe even have is you, and you don't even know if you have half of yourself at that point. God just says, just come. Come to me. Like you talked to the tax collectors, come to the temple. Bring what you got, even if you have no idea what he could do with it. And verse 19, he directed the people to sit down on the grass, taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. And then he gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the people. Jesus will take whatever we got. You know that saying, come as you are. But you may not have any idea how he can use what you got. And it may be a gift, it might be a talent, it might be your brokenness, it might be your past experiences, but nothing is wasted. That's what we're even see about leftovers here. So, spoiler alert. So he takes what they did have, and he first of all again thanks God. He looks up to heaven. So whatever it is that God has shown you, when you really want to take a look that day, don't look at all that you don't have or how it's not going to be enough. Look at what you do have. Thank God for it. Look up to heaven and then watch him make it enough. With God in the equation, it's enough. In your own mind, in your own fears, it becomes even less and less of what you feel is enough and satisfactory and sufficient. And you start to feel like, I'm just lacking. And maybe, and then when the devil wants to get in with that and say, like with Eve, really, you can't? You can't have what you want? And putting those thoughts in of it's not what other people have, and I want more, and some of that envy and jealousy and greed that even when you got more, it wouldn't be enough. It says, use what you've got. Let me work with you for who you are, multiply it, and make it enough, even if you can't see how it'll work. And that's where the trust comes in. That's where God gets to show up and show out and say, with me, now you're going to see who really satisfies and who really makes it enough. And so the people, then the disciples went and just started sharing it and just listened. And I'm sure when Jesus said, okay, now go pass it out, I'm not sure if that point had already multiplied, or as they were just passing it out, they had to take that leap of faith to say, God will provide. It will be enough because he told us to pass it out. I think of the story with, I believe it was Elijah and the widow, and when he said, can you give me some food? And she said, all I got is just enough for me and my son, and we're just gonna die. And Elijah said, well, make me some that last loaf of bread. And she did, and the jar of oil never ran out. It was just always enough. How would our lives be different if we didn't have to worry, if we didn't have the anxiety of wondering, oh, my bank account is low, or oh, I'm not good enough to do that, or oh, they're not gonna listen to me because, like Moses, I'm not a good speaker, I stutter, or maybe that initially the woman from at the well thinking, I've had 5 husbands, like they're really gonna think I have anything to say. Or even Paul, when he says, they know my record, they know I was against the Jews. How do you think I'm gonna have any testimony with them? And God said, well, I'm not gonna send you right away to the Jews, you're gonna go to the Gentiles. God says, let me handle it. Just come as you are, come with what you have. And then verse 20, they all ate and were satisfied. And the disciples picked up 12 baskets full of broken pieces that were left over. It says, oh, there's such good words here. They all ate. All 5,000, and that does not include the women and the children that were there. And they were satisfied. That doesn't mean they just had a little crumb. That means that they had enough. They had more than enough. And remember when Jesus made that wine for the wedding guests and they said, like, this is amazing wine. I'm guessing it was the same thing with the bread and the fish. It wasn't just that, it was amazing because it came from God. All good gifts come from God. And it's our perspective too, that we can see something as saying, oh yeah, but it wasn't, or it could have been, instead of saying, wow, this is what God gave me today. Thank you, God. They were satisfied. God wants us to have abundance, because then the last verse, there were 12 baskets left over. There was abundance. Jesus said that the devil wants to steal, kill, and destroy. He talks about the good shepherd, a thief. When we are living life in worry and anxiety, it's stealing the day from us. It's stealing our peace from us. It's hurting our bodies. It's hurting our minds. It's hurting our relationships. It's hurting our spiritual relationship with God, because instead of turning to Him with our problem, we're worrying about it. We're taking it on ourselves. We think we have to decide. We're not letting God multiply and provide. And so Jesus said, but I have come, He's the good shepherd, I have come to give them life and give it to them abundantly. That's His promise. That's what He wishes for His people. Abundance. And that doesn't mean just stuff. It means that in whatever He gives us, we can thank and praise and be grateful and be satisfied and be full. The number of those who ate was 5,000 men besides women and children. That was verse 21. Impossible. And maybe what you're looking at too in your future is just impossible. It doesn't add up. I have to make my own way, and I don't even see how I can do that. And there's no way. And again, remember a God who makes a way out of no way, who feeds 5,000 people with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, who makes wine out of water, who makes the water part so the Israelites can walk through. There's nothing that our good God can't do. And when you put your request before Him, He will work it out in His way, in His time. And as you wait on Him, you can soar on wings like eagles and not be weighed down by worry and anxiety. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.